एंड साथ में उनके जो डोमेन है एज जेंडेक्स एंड सीआरएस एंड बीएफएसआई, इनको हम लोग कवर करते हैं और उसके बाद बच्चों का प्लेसमेंट कराते हैं। प्लेसमेंट इज द मेन फोकस ऑफ दिस प्रोग्राम।
The happiness of the students is really felt from their face when they get their job and after getting their first salary.
फर्स्ट सैलरी लेके मम्मी पापा को दूंगी पहले तो।
अब ऐसा लगता है कि मैं खुद का पैसे कमा रहा हूँ।
अब जॉब मिला, जॉब पाके मैं बहुत खुश हूँ।
उस सैलरी से कुछ भाग मैंने अपने लिए सेविंग करके रखा और कुछ भाग से मैंने अपने फैमिली के लिए कुछ गिफ्ट खरीद कर लाया।
आज मैं काबिल हूँ।
Hey, hi. Hi, this is Divyanshu. Can you see me?
Yes, Divyanshu, we can see you and we can hear you also. Good morning,
Is the
Manmeet
frame
ma'am.
okay?
Yes, all okay.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to turn it off.
Yes. Good morning so much. Thank you so much, Manmeet ma'am, for joining us just in time. We are going to start exactly at 11. Thank you so much.
So, good morning, everyone. I hope we all are happy and healthy. Welcome to the 14th edition of Saajhi Samajh. I am Taran Kaur, Associate Faculty for EVS at Tech Mahindra Foundation and your host for today's event. Saajhi Samajh, which translates to shared understanding in English, is an attempt to create a platform for advocacy through discussions on issues related to and relevant to the developmental sector in India. Saajhi Samajh 14 will explore how technology can drive meaningful inclusion and equip persons with disabilities for a rapidly evolving tech-enabled future. As we all know, technology has long served as a powerful catalyst for societal change. In the lives of people with disabilities, assistive technologies have opened vital doors from basic tools like eyeglasses and braille system to modern innovations such as screen readers, voice recognition software, and reading assistants. Aligned with this ethos, Tech Mahindra Foundation proudly presents the 14th edition of Saajhi Samajh, focusing on inclusive intelligence, shaping a compassionate, tech-enabled future. I would also like to take a moment to share that today, 27 June, marks the birth anniversary of Helen Keller. Helen Keller, a pioneer who broke barriers for people with disabilities. Her life continues to inspire generations to believe that inclusion, it's not a privilege, but a right. What better day than this to reaffirm our commitment to creating a world where technology uplifts, empowers, and includes all. So let's dive into our discussions. But before we do so, please take note of the following guidelines to ensure a smooth experience. Your mic and video are auto-disabled. To ask questions, kindly look at the blue colored edit option at the top left, click new chat and direct your questions to Q&A_Krishna. For a better viewing experience, select speaker view in the Zoom app and consider choosing hide non-video participants from the menu. To view captions in Zoom, click on the CC closed caption or live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window and select show subtitles. I am pleased to welcome our sign language interpreters for the event, Miss Sonal from Noida Deaf Society and Miss Rukshi from Teach. To pin the sign language interpreters, click on the three dots on the top right of their videos and select the pin option. Now, moving ahead, it is my pleasure to invite Miss Khushbu, Associate Education and Employability at Tech Mahindra Foundation, to provide us with an overview of the work we are doing at the foundation. Over to you, Khushbu.
Thank you, Taran. A very good morning to our esteemed guests of honor, our inspiring heroes from various projects, the wonderful audience, and my dear colleagues. Established in 2006, Tech Mahindra Foundation is driven by the vision of empowerment through education. With a presence in 20 cities across India, we are proud to collaborate with over 90 partners, impacting lives through more than 150 projects. At the heart of all our efforts is the belief that educated, skilled, and empowered women and men are the true strength of any nation. The foundation operates across two key verticals: education and employability. Disability, women empowerment, and mental well being are cross cutting themes across our programs. The foundation operates with a clear mandate. 50% of its beneficiaries are women, and 10% are persons with disability, underscoring our commitment to social inclusion and equal opportunity for all. Under the employability vertical, our flagship program is SMART, which stands for Skills for Market Training. This initiative helps young people from underserved communities to learn the skills they need to get good jobs. The SMART program is run by the foundation itself and also through partner organizations. In the realm of education, we have two significant programs. First is Shikshantar. It is our flagship capacity building program for teachers, school administrators, and leaders. The second is Arise Plus, which stands for All Round Improvement in School Education for Children with Disabilities. It is a special initiative focused on school education and the overall well being of persons with disabilities aged 0 to 18 years. Through the collective impact of our various programs, we have positively influenced the lives of more than 60,000 teachers, over 2 lakh children, beyond 3,50,000 youth, and more than 70,000 persons with disabilities. Building on this commitment to inclusion, I would now like to introduce you to the Ability Network, which is a focused initiative designed to drive change for and with persons with disabilities. Across India today, an estimated 60 million people live with disabilities, and far too many are excluded from the dignity of daily life, whether it's access to education, livelihood, healthcare, or elderly care. This is where the Ability Network or TAN steps in. TAN is built to be a dynamic, human centric, and accessible ecosystem built around a strong digital core. It is designed to connect persons with disabilities and their caregivers to individualized, curated services across all stages of life. TAN aims to bring together a coalition of solution providers, practitioners, and people all working together to enable a life of dignity for every person with disability. For phase one, we aim to pilot from Telangana as a state and Bangalore as a city. This effort would not have been possible without the dedicated contribution of our co-creators, Enable India, Ek Step Foundation, Nai Disha, Ujjwal Impact Advisors, and PACTA, whose vision and collaboration helped bring TAN to life. We also extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment for their continued support. A special mention must go to Mr. Rajesh Agarwal and Ms. Manmeet Kaur Nanda, whose leadership and belief in the vision of TAN helped carry this initiative forward. Thank you for your attention to the impactful work of Tech Mahindra Foundation in the social development sector. It has been a pleasure sharing our journey with you. I will now hand over the session to Taran.
Thank you so much, Khushbu, for that insightful overview of our foundation's work. So moving ahead for the next segment, I would like to introduce Chetan Kapoor, CEO of Tech Mahindra Foundation. He is a seasoned developmental expert with over 2 decades of experience in education and skill development. He began his journey with an MBA from the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade and transitioned from a corporate career to the social sector. His career includes founding and leading initiatives focused on education and skills, as well as managing transformative programs in these areas. Chetan, I would now like you to formally introduce the keynote speaker for today's event.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Taran. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you at the 14th edition of Saajhi Samajh, TMF's effort at nurturing a shared understanding of topics related and relevant to our work in particular and the social sector in general. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. When we were deliberating on the topics for this Saajhi Samajh, we had zeroed in on the applicability of artificial intelligence to the realm of supporting persons with disabilities. And then we thought a little deeper, asking ourselves how, in this era of AI that we are living in, the time tested and very human idea of emotional intelligence fits into the scheme of things, especially in the context of providing support to PWDs and their caregivers. The role of human emotions and feelings will always be there and can never be underplayed. Hence, we came up with the term inclusive intelligence, implying that technology and human compassion must go hand in hand. And to take on this very relevant topic, we have for you today an illustrious array of speakers, and I am certainly excited to listen to them. But first, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker for the day, Srimati Manmeet Kaur Nanda, IAS, Additional Secretary in the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Srimati Nanda currently leads key national initiatives such as the Accessible India campaign and the Scheme for Implementation of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, driving structural and digital accessibility across the country. Her efforts have significantly strengthened support systems for persons with disabilities through aids, scholarships, and rehabilitation schemes. Honored with the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration 2016, she is known for her impactful and inclusive governance. Ms. Nanda is widely respected for her result-oriented leadership and a sustained commitment to equity and empowerment, and we are honored to have her with us today. Ma'am, may I please invite you to share your keynote address with us?
Thank you, Chetan ji, and thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. It's an honor to join you all, esteemed panelists, speakers, and all of you who have clocked in today. On this significant date indeed of Helen Keller's anniversary, we need to gather and explore what Chetan ji just mentioned, inclusive intelligence and technology, and how it will shape the life of so many around us. And I think what we must also take along with, while celebrating Helen Keller's efforts and her journey, is her belief in the potential of every individual. And I think that aligns to the very core of the discussion that we will have today. Assistive technology landscape is widely changing, greatly evolving, and we at the department have understood the importance of assistive technology in our way to associate with different startups and technology partners in order to make our own delivery to the stakeholders far more bettered and more effective in today's world. The AI-powered tools like real-time transcription and adaptive learning platforms are indeed beginning to break barriers, enabling persons with disabilities to access quality education. For instance, the text-to-speech software can now empower visually impaired students to engage with all sort of digital curricula. Of course, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm sure all stakeholders here understand that importance. AI-driven job-making platforms, like very much that you mentioned about SMART, and our special projects that we like to undertake under the PM Daksh program are using AI to open new career paths, to improve the skilling that we give to persons with disabilities so that they can contribute as a part of the workforce with skill sets and with dignity. I think that's a very important part that we need to focus on. While bringing the balance between using AI and being inclusive and having an emotional intelligence to it. Smart wheelchairs, navigation apps with haptic feedback are indeed enhancing independence that we see today, allowing people with disabilities to move around freely, at least in urban settings, And I'm accepting this, that this is a step forward in the right direction, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done, even in the urban cities of today that we live in, and more so in the rural settings that we know Bharat has. Simple innovation apps like voice-activated home assistants, wearable health monitors are definitely making routine tasks more accessible and safer for people with disabilities. So I indeed is one of a bigger champion of AI in the use of this field. And I think that AI is going to create gigantic steps to increasing the accessibility and the life for people with disabilities. And I think that is why the engagement that our Secretary DPWD has been continuing for the last year and a half and taking this forward. Our Purple Talks with different startups, different companies, have resulted in about 50 plus MOUs with them, where we are engaging with smart technology solution providers to improve the aids or the appliances and the services that we are providing to our stakeholders. We very recently had a very successful AI conference in Bangalore, where we again interacted with many AI players in this field working in PWD AI technology aids, and I think it was eye opening. I mean, we all know of the apps like Ava, Otter. We are looking forward to Meta's smart vision glasses, and I think that's going to create a revolution. But we must understand that with AI, and as a government, and as all of you as a part of this ecosystem, the AI acceptability will all depend on its affordability, on its accessibility. I mean, how much we can be able to spread that across the country. And most importantly, the backbone of all of it would depend upon the strength of our digital inclusivity across the villages and the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities that we talk about. It is indeed very important to blend AI with emotional intelligence and human values. We cannot and ever think that AI can replace the emotional intelligence of a human being or a caregiver. And it is with this artificial intelligence at this crossroad that we need to use technology to amplify the requirement for inclusion and not widen the gap between the human touch and technology that it provides to. We would probably look at AI being tailored to adapt to a user's movements required, and then also will inbuilt in it a guidance that is based on compassion, which will be coming through and human interacting with that AI. And I think balancing this technology is extremely important. We have AI chatbots. I saw that during the conference that I just spoke about, that talk about supporting mental health for people with intellectual disabilities. It will be used to complement and not replace human therapists. It will require to ensure that the empathy and the trust that the therapist provides to its patient is only being saved and protected through that app and not replacing it. It can never replace it. AI can never replace the human touch, for sure. And I think for PWDs, it is very important that we need to increase digital literacy in the school programs to help them navigate AI tools confidently. And I think that is why our secretary is the biggest propaganda of the fact that we need to ensure our PWDs take board exams, irrespective of which board, but without the use of scribes. Use technology, teach them how to use digital technology, laptops, phones, smart apps right from an early age, so that they can use AI to their best need and requirement. We need to also educate caregivers and parents in recognizing trustworthy technology, advise them to verify every kind of AI app source, use secure passwords, because cybersecurity is an issue that will, it affects all our lives. It affects everybody, but it'll definitely affect a person with disability even more. So it's very important for caregivers and parents to also recognize the importance of it and pay more and more attention to it. And of course, report suspicious activities whenever they encounter something like that. While will also, while I'm on this aspect of AI technology, we need to also ensure, and today's discussion should also throw about ideas about how we can ensure that there is data privacy, ensuring personal health information remains confidential, how we can save people with disabilities using AIs against any kind of fraudulence, and encourage caregivers to use only certified platforms. The Ability Network is doing an amazing job, I must say. I'm just very new and nascent to this ecosystem. It's just my 6 months, but I think the network exemplifies what is required in this ecosystem of how government, corporate, civil society organization can come together and be the leaders and beacon holders to drive change. I have seen, and through records that I have gone through, that how the Accessible India campaign has laid down the groundwork for inclusive infrastructure in the country. A lot has been done, but there is so much more to cover. And I think it doesn't only depend on the government. We need to have a lot of it coming from the private sector in a big way. And I'm glad that corporates like Tech Mahindra are bringing cutting edge solutions and platforms like this so as to bring forward the requirement of the private sector and the civil society holding hands with the government to take forward this agenda of the Accessible India campaign. Many organizations in the civil society that I read about, iSTEM, the Sarvodaya Collective, also amplify grassroots voices, ensuring that the solutions that we all talk about in virtual meetings and conferences or in workshops like this meet the actual needs at the ground level. I urge all of us that we are on this call today to sustain such partnerships and to also participate in R&D initiatives and in public forums like this to ensure that there is a co-creation and a joint future for assistive technology that we are talking about, and which will ensure that there is a great positive impact on the lives of PWDs around all of us. This evolving landscape of assistive technology holds immense promise, but its success depends on our collective action. And the power of collaboration innovation is what we are here to build upon and learn from. I thank you so much for having me in this discussion today, and I'm sure that the workshop today will throw open immense ideas. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing that experience. It was indeed a pleasure to listen to your thought-provoking insights. So moving ahead, we have a very special segment, a milestone that we have achieved together, the unveiling of the Ability Network website. For that, I would request you and Mr. Chetan to kindly stay with us. So, the moment is here. I would request Mr. Chetan and Ms. Nanda to kindly show us a thumbs up to unveil the website. Now, let us walk through the TAN website. What is now visible on your screen is the landing page of the Ability Network website with its vision, mission, and the team that has worked incredibly hard to bring TAN to life. The website also features an event section where you can view our past events, including the Ability Dialogues and the TAN launch at the Purple Fest in New Delhi. With this launch, we are also officially opening the onboarding form for organizations and individuals who wish to showcase their work and services for persons with disabilities and their caregivers, enabling lives with independence, dignity, and access. Simply click on the Join Us tab in the header to fill out the onboarding form. It will ask for a detailed description of your services and solutions, helping us build a trustworthy and robust network. The link to the website has been shared in the chat box below. So thank you, Mr. Chetan and Ms. Nanda, for unveiling the website for all of us. And congratulations to all of us who believed in creating a collaborative ecosystem for all. A lot of efforts were put in to work towards the idea where we all are feel included. And now, carrying the spirit of inclusion and shared understanding forward, I am personally quite excited for our next segment. For the next segment, I would like to invite Ms. Neha Sunitji, Program Director, Child Development and the Ability Network at Tech Mahindra Foundation, who will guide us through the next segment, User Experience for Persons with Disability. Over to you, Neha.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tara. Chetan, do you want to say something before I continue?
I just want to thank Manmeet ji with the bottom of my heart because what she just shared with us, and it just is so gratifying to hear that the government is taking such pioneering steps in terms of supporting persons with disabilities. And we now know that the kind of technology which is available today is something which was, things that are possible today were not possible just about, 4 or 5 years ago. And with this, I personally believe that, this is a challenge in the social sector, which can perhaps be solved within our lifetimes, within my lifetime as well. And that's something which I'm really, really, really looking forward to, because as we know, working in this sector, you have to go in with the belief that there could be certain challenges which might take more than a lifetime to solve. So from that perspective, thank you so much, Manmeet ji. Thanks also to Rajesh ji, because he's been such a champion and has actually inspired us to do more, put in our best, take the best foot forward in doing so. So your support is something which is very, very welcome to us, and we look forward to this. I would also like to thank, on the same breath, all the collaborators of the Ability Network, because we realized soon after stepping into this space that we can only be standing, on the shoulders of giants who've already done such, pioneering work before us. And I think the idea behind the Ability Network is to just be the facilitator to bring all of these solutions together so that the solution seekers do not have to run from pillar to post and are able to find the solutions, curated solutions that actually work in a meaningful manner. So thank you so much for being a part of this journey, and I look forward to staying in touch with you in the times to come, Manmeet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving forward. Thanks, Taran. And it was very, very inspiring to hear Ms. Manmeet Nanda. Good morning, everyone. Very pleased to introduce our featured guest, Mr. Divyanshu Ganatra today. Divyanshu is one of the world's leading speakers on leadership, inclusion, and innovation. And it's just a bonus that he's also one of the most motivating and inspiring individuals you will ever meet in this day and age. At 19, Divyanshu lost his eyesight to glaucoma, and from there till now, he has achieved a lot. Professionally, he's a clinical psychologist, he's an advocate of diversity and inclusion, and he's also founder of Adventures Beyond Barriers Foundation. His early career started in technology, and he continues his stint in technology by mentoring early startups in the tech sector. His early tech experience, in fact, was from a time when tech was completely inaccessible to non-sighted individuals. And Divyanshu's electrifying experiences with sports makes him India's first solo blind pilot, trekker, mountaineer, scuba diver, marathoner, and the first blind pillion cyclist to ride from Manali to Kardungla, the highest motorable road in the world. Glad to have you with us, Divyanshu, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Neha, and it's such a joy to be here. And congratulations on the launch of the website.
Thanks, Divyanshu. So Divyanshu, right now we both are on Spotlight, which means that everybody on this screen can see both of us. We had a picture of you on your designation when I was reading out your introduction. There were slides playing in the background, but right now we don't have any slides. So let's get started. I really cannot wait to have this conversation with you. So Divyanshu, tell us, from the time when you lost your sight till date, you have achieved a lot, and I must congratulate on this feat. It's absolutely commendable. So, Divyanshu, has technology played any role, if at all? Was it a lever behind all these experiences that you have had in the last 3 decades?
Massively, Neha. I cannot underscore how technology has been an enabler for me because I lost my sight advantageously. So I woke up blind at 19. And back then, tech was unheard of for the blind. So I had to fight my way through. But I saw a huge future in technology 30 years ago. And I saw that as an opportunity to change lives. Because if you look at disability from a lens of medical lens, then I'm blind. That's a medical condition. But if you look at disability from the lens of the built environment, from a social functional aspect, then my disability is also a factor of how I interact with the built environment. So to give you a quick example of that, to make it simpler to understand, would be the fact that somebody's in a wheelchair. You ask them, "Can you go up a flight of steps?" The answer is no. But can you go up this ramp? The answer is yes. So disability largely also is around functional limitations. And if we are like your specs, right? They're a disability aid. They're a accessibility aid. Yeah. We don't look at glasses, spectacles as an accessibility aid. So if you look at it from that lens, technology is an amazing way in which we can reduce these functional limitations, bring about empowerment, and I'm able to do the same things as everybody else and navigate through the world. So my being here has been largely a function of technology. My being able to live independently for last 25 years has been a function of technology. Being able to be part of mainstream society, working shoulder to shoulder with some of the stalwarts has been all thanks to technology.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Divyanshu, for sharing that. In fact, of course, technology has been there, but I also want to put some credit on your table because you seem someone who's curious and someone who's taken the complete advantage of technology that you received, right? And now that artificial intelligence has started to, guard our lives like never before, how are things changing for you, Divyanshu? I mean, how are you embracing this really fast-paced change? What are some of the tools that you're using that really makes you happy?
Um, I couldn't underscore how important it is to stay curious, to stay intensely curious. I think that is one thing that has really helped me to keep learning, to keep upskilling yourself. And now the rate of you having to upskill has gone up exponentially.
Yeah.
But at the same time, information knowledge has gotten democratized. It's no longer just the purview of the elite few. It's accessible to everybody. You can learn what you want on the fly. So upskilling, learning continuously is not an option. And if you have to work 4 times as hard, so be it. But it's not an option. Adapting to new technologies is something that is not an option. We have to adapt to new technologies. We have to keep experimenting with new technology. And with life completely changed 2 years ago when AI was launched for public, for the consumers. And to me, it is now forcing us, and we need to really sit down and redefine everything that we know about ourselves, everything that we know about our systems, everything that we know about the world. It is absolutely challenging in redefining everything. But to me, the ability to become even more independent, the ability to simple things like, say, Be My Eyes app, or the fact that images now get instantly recognized and described. That's massive. Just think about it. 2 years ago, everybody was sending images on WhatsApp. They're just images and media floating around like no man's business. Only 1% of the media in the world is accessible to the blind. Only 1%. There's 50 years of video that gets uploaded on YouTube a single day, out of which less than 1% is accessible. Now, and now with the advent of AI, all of that gets described to me on the fly. All of that gets accessible to me on the fly. That is massively empowering.
Yeah. Excellent.
But we
Excellent.
have
In
to,
fact, yeah.
we really have to make most of it.
Yeah, no, completely
But
agree with you. In fact, yeah, I have to catch up because I remember in a conversation you were mentioning about so many apps, and I was like, oh, I really need to catch up because I was
yeah,
not aware of, in the last 2 years itself, there's so much that is happening. Yes, please, you
absolutely.
were saying something. Yeah.
Absolutely. While I'm saying that, I'm also very, very aware of the privilege that I have, Neha.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that privilege has helped me get early access to all of this technology. That privilege has given me the ability to go and buy and purchase and test out these technologies. And to me, when we talk about accessibility, it is not accessible if it's not affordable. Even today, a country like India, a country like Africa, we struggle with a huge digital divide, a massive digital divide. And we're talking about basic stuff. So unless we don't make technology accessible by making it affordable, it's not going to help. So the new class, according to me, that's going to come out now with all of this technology going forward, the new class is going to be the people who are able to use this technology to the maximum. The people who are able to hold these technology gateways are going to be the new class of people. And that's what we need to start thinking about today, because to me, we no longer have we constantly fixing for yesterday, but we need to look ahead. We need to now fix for the challenges that are going to come up with the advent of technology, and look ahead into the future and fix for that and start working towards that now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's where I was coming to next. In fact, even in Miss Manmeet Kaur's keynote, she mentioned that about accessibility and affordability, and the digital divide is only increasing with the whole AI trend coming in. But Divyanshu, let me now, steer the conversation a little bit towards my favorite part, which is also calling out the elephant in the room. There's AI, and it's so cool, and it's helping all of us, including persons with disabilities. But where does human intuition and human instinct play a role in all this? What would you say? Sometimes the app is saying, hey, Divyanshu, this is safe, jump in, but somewhere your intuition must be like, no, maybe not. So how are you balancing these two sides?
Oh God, Neha, those are the most difficult questions everybody is struggling with today.
I'm sure.
I referred to that in my early conversation with you just now, that we need to redefine everything.
Yeah.
And starting with redefining or asking ourselves, what does it mean to be human in the day and age of AI? What does it really mean to be human? What makes us human? What will make us continue to be relevant 5 years from now? How will we know the difference between man and machine? All of these are questions that we are still grappling with, because everything that we thought was the domain of humans, for example, emotional intelligence. Last week, a research report has come out that shows machines are better at emotional intelligence than humans now. Humans scored 57% on the same test, and machines tested 82%. So who's more emotionally intelligent? So these are all questions that are hard to grapple with, hard to understand, but the rate of change is really fast. But at the same time, there are two things that come to mind. One is you talked about intuition, and to me, knowledge is additive. We keep learning, we keep adding to our knowledge. But what makes us human right now is wisdom, which is the crystallized form of knowledge. So wisdom is not additive. Wisdom is the crystallized form of knowledge. And to me, that'll continue to remain, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
But over time, the difference between man and machine is going to go so small. It's going to be hard to differentiate between man and machine 5 years from now, probably by 2029, less than 5 years from now, 4 years to go now. That's the date I put for singularity, where man-machine is the same. we also got to look at a future where a decade from now, disability itself will remain a choice. And I say that very consciously, that it'll remain a choice, because if given a choice, will I want to go back to seeing again? As of now, maybe not. But 10 years from now, the choice will remain. 10 years from now, we probably have not 20/20 vision, but even better with infrared and thermal imaging and much better resolution sight possible by augmentation. So then again, if you have your sight augmented and you have even better vision that you can see 100 kilometers away, then someone like an average person with average sight of 20/20 will be a person with disability. So all of these things are going to get redefined. And to me, not just with AI and technology, but also with CAS and CRISPR and the ability to edit genes and pick and choose and create humans that are customized. We always had our voices up with amniocentesis, where fetuses were aborted simply because they had a chromosomal or a disability detected in the womb. Now it's out in the open. So all of these are very hard challenges. I'm sorry I'm bringing up these things, but we have no answers to these. But things we have to. It's imperative that we start having these conversations now, because the rate of change is extremely fast.
Yeah, and I mean, it's overwhelming, to be honest. I'm not going to shy away from saying that, not only for me, but I think for a lot of us, this can get, uncomfortable, or at least I feel a little scary. And I was telling you the other day that, if something like this begins to happen, where it becomes a choice, or we can't differentiate between machine and human. But Divyanshu, tell me something, as a person, who uses technology so much, and any rail guards, anything that you would suggest our audience that we need to be cautious about or careful about when we are using technology to that extent, which is only going to increase now in days to come.
So, as of now, Neha, as of today, all of this technology is built by humans, right? So there is the human bias that comes in, that seeps in, and it is extremely imperative, extremely important to put guardrails against these human biases that creep in. Just to give you an example, if I have set up a system to sort through resumes, and I have been the man in the loop, but now the machine has learned over time how I'm picking and choosing resumes, or what's the best candidate. Then from a pool of 1,000, the machine is going to say, hey, you know what? The most classic out of these 1,000 is going to be an able-bodied person. The machine might stop picking people with disability as an appropriate candidate, even if that person has nothing to do with that job. I mean, the disability and the job have nothing in as a relation. But the machine is not going to understand that. AI is not going to understand that, because it was programmed that way. That bias crept in, and we're seeing those biases creep in, not just with disability. We're seeing those biases creep in with class, with race, with all kinds of things. Gender, absolutely, with all kinds of things. And that's what we need to ensure those guardrails come in really fast. We need regulation to come in really fast, and unfortunately, regulation never catches up soon enough. And now the genie is out of the bottle, honestly, because all of these models are now open source. They've gone out of the bottle. But we need to be conscious when programming for these things, because there are two things that I'm worried about. All of these biases will put us in an echo chamber, will put us in a disadvantage that we wouldn't even realize that the machine is putting us at a disadvantage. The other thing is, it is fast making a lot of us irrelevant if we don't wake up and do something about it. If we don't wake up and re-look at skilling, re-look at the future of jobs, re-look at what will stay relevant 5 years from now, and prepare for it today. So all of these are challenges and biases that come in, and that's why guardrails, regulations are absolutely imperative.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Divyanshu. In fact, um, some human values we definitely want the machine to also adapt, like compassion, dignity, but there are some human values or biases that we definitely don't want the machine to take in, and we hope that the inclusive intelligence, that has been coined will work in that direction. Any last word of advice for our audience today? As a person with disability, Divyanshu, who's extensively making use of AI and technology, any last few words of advice for everybody listening to you today?
I think while I say all of these things, I'm super excited about the prospect that technology brings into the world, the prospect that it democratizes a lot of information, access, learning, education, and most importantly, education and learning is no longer the preview of those who go to school. All I need is an internet connection and a laptop, and I can learn on my own, and that is fantastic opportunity we never had before. That I can create my courses, what I want to learn on the fly, instantly customized to me. That is changing education and learning. And if we don't use that today, then God help you. But if you do, then it's the most exciting times in our lives for people with disability. We've never had a time in the entire history of the world where people with disability had such a huge opportunity waiting for them. It's a new day. It's a brand new day. We need to embrace it and run with it.
Right, absolutely, Divyanshu. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you,
It
Neha.
was
Thank you.
inspiring, but also very, very honest. So thank you so much, Divyanshu.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for this opportunity, and good luck with the Ability Network. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very, very inspiring. What stood out to me, especially from the conversation with Divyanshu, was just his curiosity and openness to embracing technology. Of course, he did highlight some of the biases or some of the challenges, but he also was someone who I found, just going with the day and making best use of the opportunities that are coming his way. Thank you once again, and over to you, Taran.
Thank you, Neha, and thank you, Devanshu, for that insightful discussion and for helping us reimagine what accessibility truly means from a user's perspective. Now, building on the ideas and inspiration we have just heard, it is time for a very special part of today's event, our panel discussion, where we will hear different voices, experiences, and insights. A gentle reminder before we move forward, you can post your questions in the chat box to Q&A_Krishna. Now, I'd like to take this moment to introduce our esteemed panelists. Today, we have with us Ms. Pooja Sharma, founder and CEO of the Sarvodaya Collective, an organization committed to building awareness and active allyship for the cause of neurodiversity and inclusion. She strongly believes in the transformative power of education to drive personal and societal change. Next up, we have Mr. Karthik Sahani, co-founder, disability advocate, and technologist at iSTEM. iSTEM develops innovative solutions to empower persons with disabilities in accessing educational and employment opportunities. Karthik's work have earned national recognition, including the National Award for Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. Next up, we also have Mr. Parth Lavate, CEO and co-founder of TakeB Technologies. He is known for his contribution to open source technologies and scalable digital solutions in education, governance, and industry. His work continues to drive meaningful technology-led impact. And finally, we have with us Mr. U. Sanyasi Rao, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for Engineering Services at Tech Mahindra. With his deep expertise in telecom and next generation technologies, he's been instrumental in leading innovations in NFV, LTE, and 5G. I warmly welcome all our panelists today. But before we get to hear them, let me introduce our moderator for today's session, Ms. Deepika Mogli Shetty, Chief of Policy and Partnership at 8 Step Foundation. She leads impactful work on digital public goods and early childhood development, including the Bachpan Banao and Badhte Jao initiative with 100+ partner organizations. Her experience will bring an invaluable perspective to the discussion. So, over to you, Ms. Deepika. We are looking ahead for an enriching conversation.
Thank you so much, Taran. Thank you, everybody, for making this happen today. And what an enriching hour this has been, with different voices and everything. So I'm going to just jump right into this because we have a time that, a clock that's ticking. We have 40 minutes. Okay. And then these 40 minutes, there are a few questions that I want to have and a discussion between the five of us, which covers a broad range of topics. Looks at the role of technology, what does it mean in the lives of people, what would we want it to be like, but also at the same time, what does it mean to create space and make space and enable the voice of persons to be persons with disability to be heard, both in working in spaces of technology as well as in building of technology. So this is sort of the broad spectrum. And when I say tech, AI, of course, is going to be a part of it. So that's the sort of framework within which I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to start with Karthik, if I may. And, Divyanshu and Neha had a fun conversation just before us. And Divyanshu kind of ended it with this highly optimistic note of huge opportunity like never before. So Karthik is someone who builds, someone who thinks, someone who creates, and someone also who's actually advocating for voices of persons with disability. Let me ask you this question. Do you feel like it is like never before? And, and in the world that's changing every 2 days with incredible new solutions, incredible new apps, and incredibly new everything that's happening, what are you thinking? How do you feel about it? What makes you feel empowered? What makes you feel like, oh, this is great and we can do a lot? And what are your worries and concerns? You as a builder at iSTEM, you as creator of spaces at iSTEM, but also the fact that you actually are, creating spaces for a large community of young people to talk in these young people with disability. So I'd like to hear this from both perspectives, you personally and also the voices of the young community that you sort of co-hold in some way.
Thanks so much, Deepika. Again, a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you today. Exciting times. I think I'm going to agree with Divyanshu. I'm going to start with that. Certainly a lot of stuff that I used to think of as science fiction, only I think like 4 or 5 years ago. Just the rate at which technology is evolving and accelerating, I think certainly things are becoming possible. There's one thing that we often talk about in the assistive technology space where we talk about how technology makes things more efficient for people without disabilities. And for us as people with disabilities, technology often makes things possible. And I think we're actually seeing a lot of that happen. Personally, as well as someone who is blind, being able to, for example, get rich descriptions and then being able to ask follow-on questions for those descriptions for a lot of the visual content that I wasn't able to access before is actually great. Being able to access a lot of the websites that I wasn't able to access before, using new technologies that enable me to do that through alternative methods and alternative means is definitely very exciting. So I do think that definitely there's a lot of potential. Both Manmeet ma'am as well as Divyanshu have talked a lot about different use cases. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Just in terms of speech recognition and captioning, etc., etc. But really, I think what I want to do is basically maybe provide a slightly more balanced view. They kind of mentioned some of the challenges as well. But as someone who is developing technology, we actually see that all the time when using a lot of the mainstream AI models. So for context, a lot of these AI models, known as large language models, for example, are trained on massive amounts of data. And this is basically a lot of the data from the web. And this basically means that a lot of the bias that exists around people with disabilities, a lot of the low expectations that exist around people with disabilities, that actually then makes its way into the model as well. A lot of the inaccessibility, 96% of our web today is inaccessible for people with disabilities, despite a lot of advocacy that has happened in the last 3 years. It's almost like saying digitally, if you were in Delhi, people with disabilities can only access India Gate while everyone else can explore the entire city. That's really what the state of the digital world is right now. And when AI is basically picking up from a lot of this on the internet, naturally the models do have a challenge. And so a lot of our time at iSTEM really goes into trying and seeing how do we in ways mitigate this bias? How do we make sure that we get the voices of people with disabilities in the models that we're building, but also shape through partnerships how some of the mainstream model providers are thinking about some of this stuff as well, right from representation. So think about, I like to use this example quite a lot. Just the other day, I was talking about how does a blind person become a software engineer, and one of the popular service the model providers goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you're blind," and I'm like, "Well, I'm not sorry that I'm blind. I don't know why you are sorry that I'm blind." But it's things like those. It's things like a lot of the image generation models depicting people in certain ways that are not only disrespectful but just plain inaccurate, right? And then they perpetuate a lot of the bias. So I think certainly a lot more to do in terms of how we're thinking about model development. Also, to think about the actual user experience, right? I mean, we're talking about models, we're talking about how it's able to answer, but we shouldn't forget the fact that at the end of the day, to be able to use these models, you're also still having to navigate user interfaces. For example, the ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you're using, Perplexity, whatever other tool you're using, all of them have associated UIs. And if those UIs are not accessible, are not simple to use, and are not usable, then it doesn't matter how inclusive the model is, because you're still essentially leaving that person behind. And so that still is a challenge that we see, even in terms of very simple things that might come across as very simple chatbots. No big deal, just a chat window. Well, guess what? It's actually not that simple when you think about how the responses should be conveyed to someone with a disability. How do they actually edit? And especially as we're thinking about co-pilots and these tools collaborating with us, how do you then sort of think about a lot of those user experiences? Is actually something that we need to think a lot about, that definitely some people have started to think about, which is really encouraging, but a lot more to do. There's certainly privacy and agency as another aspect, especially for people with disabilities, and a lot of the sensitive information that might get shared as well. Of course, there's a lot of challenge right now in terms of how a lot of the data is being used, both by the model providers, but also across conversations as well. And what does it mean, especially for people who may not even have a smartphone to themselves, but may actually be sharing devices, which is the reality, a lot of people. So what does it mean then in terms of privacy? So things like that, I think, are extremely important. I quickly jump to the second part of the question around, the community voices. I'm seeing two spectrums, right? Which is people excited about it, but then also people who are extremely skeptical about it because they've seen a lot of this stuff. And so what we really are trying to do through iSTEM as well, and a lot of our partners, and of course, thanks to the government as well, in the partnership with the government, especially when Manmeet ma'am was right here with the department, is really try and strike this balance, right? Of how do we educate people and how do we help them understand that you have to use AI. There's no doubt about it, but you have to use it in ways which are responsible, and that you do your own due diligence and are cautious in how you're using it, and also have a very good understanding of the specific things that you can use it for, and the specific things where you should perhaps still use a lot of the manual tools that can perhaps provide you more accurate and authentic data that otherwise may not be the case with AI, given hallucination, right? So that I think really is kind of broadly my experience in what we're seeing about that.
Thanks so much, Karthik, for painting that picture, because as I was hearing you, it felt a little bit like as much as the shiny new world has presented itself and reinvents itself every 2 days for us, some of the fundamentals haven't changed. The question of a inclusive UI UX on a standard website versus an interface which is delivering you an AI assistant has not gone away. And how it talks to you has not gone away. So in some ways, what I'm really finding interesting about the comment you made is it's wonderful that we have these shiny toys, but they're not actually inclusive or respectful in the way of representing the voice of all of humanity and being actually accessible and useful to all of humanity. Well, it seems like it's a great opportunity, but if you go back to your old behavior, then it's not going to be. It's a massive missed opportunity. And with this framing, I actually want to bring Pooja in. And Pooja, Karthik spoke of it from the perspective of being an advocate for the community. But given the work you do, particularly in creating inclusive spaces and all of that, who needs this kind of thinking and assessment? Whose mind needs to shift? Who needs to create inclusive spaces? Do we know how to do this? And do you see the role of technology and as aid in enabling, in empowering us to do that, right? Who can it help?
Thank you for asking that question. I had just picked up my pen to make a note to bring this point in. So thanks for bringing me in at that point. I think everyone needs to know that. Whose mind needs to shift? Everyone's mind needs to shift. So when we have technology that's evolving and all of these fantastic products and experiences that are being built, the our thesis as an organization is that the reason a lot of the needs of or perspectives of folks with disability is left out is because we don't have enough exposure and enough understanding of them as a user base. And as we've been working towards this, we've, slowly started focusing more on schools because, I mean, there are like these pockets that you could be focusing on, whether it's policymakers or, product developers or, service providers. Everyone needs to take a inclusive lens. Everyone needs to take a neuro-inclusive lens. But where does it begin? We feel like, school is a microcosm of society. So if we actually, work towards making school experiences more inclusive, we will have a generation that graduates in about, 8 to 10 years' time who have adequate exposure to people of all diverse ability profiles and know how to build and provide for and service the needs of folks with different ability profiles. So everyone needs that mindset to shift, but I think that begins with adequate engagement at the right stage where it is normalized. Different ability profiles are normalized.
I want to do an add-on question to this. Now that we've said you've created the location for the shift.
Yes.
In our conversation a few days ago, you talked a little bit about how you see the role of technology as being assistive to the teacher.
Yeah.
The teacher having a tool that will enable her to actually navigate the complexity of a diverse classroom, find ways to enable things to work for a diverse classroom, and to find ways to make things inclusive. So can you speak a little bit in your imagination of what you would like to see, Pooja? Put your wish list out there, right? Put your wish list out there, not just in terms of what you want the classroom to be like and what the lived experience of children to be like, but also from how you see technology playing a role and what would you like it to do? And given all the magic that AI is unleashing on us, what would you like it to do?
I'd probably bucket it into 3 buckets over here. So one, talking about the role of the teacher, because the teacher is a facilitator of, education and inclusion in a classroom. In our conversations with teachers, and I think nobody would disagree with that, especially in the Indian context, given our classroom sizes, that the biggest challenge that a teacher has is around their time bandwidth. So, that is, we can come up with all sorts of solutions, we can come up with all sorts of ideas, but the kind of workload, besides just pure education that a teacher carries, makes it very, very difficult to layer in another new thing to do. So the way we imagine the use of technology in creating inclusion has to be woven through their workflow, so to speak. And it has to be something that actually makes it a little bit more efficient. So just last week, I came across this research from the Walton Family Foundation that talked about how the use of AI in the US is actually reducing the burden or saving about 6 hours of time in a week, and that equates to about 6 weeks of time in a year, which is substantial, which frees up actually time for a teacher to do what they need to be doing. So if you take down the time that's spent on the administrative tasks, but are also able to use technology in a way that you can provide for, universal design for being able to engage students of all ability profiles in a way that is not difficult. So that is the biggest pushback that we have when we talk about universal design for learning. हमारे पास time नहीं है, या ये कैसे बनाएंगे? But if we can use AI tools that are commonly available, that are freely available at a minimal cost to enable that, that actually makes the teacher a lot more impactful. And I loved what the Tech Mahindra team has been saying about inclusive intelligence, not to forget the human aspect. I think that is the biggest role that a teacher plays as well. There is the imparting of knowledge, but it is also the imparting of values and the confidence and the self-esteem with which a child actually goes out into the world. So that enables the teacher to also be able to nurture those qualities within not just a child with a disability, but also the others. So I think that is definitely one thing that I'd like to say. The second bucket would be on how we use tools. So I think we've kind of gotten really married to the idea of what accommodations look like. So somebody needs a scribe, but why could we not use something like a speech to text tool, which is very commonly available when we're saying take an exam, because that is something that a child could be working with that does not require an additional layer of a person being brought in, a cost associated with it. These are tools freely available to a child, and the way we imagine what accommodations are offered and how we design learning experiences and also expression for students is interesting. And then the third is I think training of teachers. I mean, building awareness for tools that is available, making it accessible. So Karthik talked about the cost of it. Making it accessible cost-wise as well, but training a teacher, because currently the teacher force that you have, not all of them are digital natives, and some will require more hand-holding than the others. And maybe if I can add a fourth bucket, is is also what do we allow? So we have all of these tech tools that are available, but do we allow technology inside a classroom? A lot of students are using technology and AI to give in their answers, but we've made such a hawa out of it. Like, we actually have such a fear of what AI is going to do to human intelligence. But how can we actually think about, what is the purpose of education, and how can we support that and scaffold that using AI, using our time to focus on the things that truly matter. How does a child thrive? How does a child show up in the world? Sorry, not throw up. Um, and what sort of technology do we allow? So we go a lot into college spaces as well, and colleges have internet jammers. So you have college students bringing in their laptops, but one cannot even use their mobile phone in a college campus. So I mean, that's a very fundamental question. It's policy and implementation. What do we allow in educational spaces?
I think that's really a fantastic spectrum of buckets that you have actually, and thank you so much for doing that, because this is really and triggering a bunch of things for me. The question of universal design has been a huge issue for a long time. How do I implement universal design for learning? How do I build technology leveraging the principles of universal design? Perhaps this is an opportunity to actually solve that problem, because apparently AI enables you to do these things faster and better and easier. So why not? Right? That could be one of the demands coming from it. But what I find really, really interesting is about the question that you ended with, which is, what do we allow? And this is where I think I want to bring Parth in. But before that, I want to make a comment as well on this. Is what do we allow associated with the question of accommodations is a very important question to consider. And perhaps maybe it's time to redefine even the question of accommodations. Because if we are worried about what AI is going to do in terms of how children are using AI to give answers, maybe it is important to redefine assessment to become something much more real and inclusive. And all the difficult things that we've had with different types of assessments for learning could now be solved. Here's an opportunity here, right? Both your fears could be the driver as opposed to inclusion, but nonetheless, it could still happen, right? So I think there are opportunities here for reimagining, turning things on their head a little bit, like Divyanshu said. Parth, you have worked in the sector on an impact sector and looking at building technologies for the impact sector for a while now. Yeah. On a daily basis, I know you're hunting for use cases to build. When it comes to inclusion and when it comes to disability, I know given the large number of nonprofits that you're connected with, question I have for you is there is such a big need, and there is a role that AI can play. Where are the challenges that you're facing to make the marriage happen? Is it the discovery of use cases? Is it knowing what to build for? Because, ultimately, if you want to build to serve a need, you should know what that need is exactly. Is that part of the problem? There may be a bunch of other fundamental infrastructural problems as well. If you can talk a little bit about, the challenges in the building, but at the same time, any solutions or any methodologies that you have followed in terms of how you've unearthed interesting use cases. And to bring the voice of community in as a builder. I think both of these would be useful for the audience and this group to know.
Got it. So I think foundationally, right, when you're building for something as diverse as India, and now we are taking the diversity to a very large spectrum, because diversity for me a few years back would not even have included people with disabilities, not in the real sense, because if you really look at the spectrum, it's very large. And in fact, Deepika, I was talking to a customer in the US just a couple of weeks back, and they were talking about making their platform accessible. And the question was that accessible in what sense? In the letter of the law or the spirit of the law? And the letter of the law is simple, and the letter of the law doesn't work. Like, you know, we were discussing just a few minutes before that 96% of the internet is not accessible. Then the letter of the law, I mean, if it worked, then it would not be the situation, right? And then there is a cost to doing that. So I think the question is moving from the letter of the law to the spirit of the law. I think the changes that we would need are in the mindset even of us as builders, right? I think there is a massive empathy gap. And this massive empathy gap, when we are talking about people with disabilities, that's way, way, way wider. So building for a farmer in a village is still, I would say, simpler than building for somebody that has a functional disability, and really getting into their shoes literally is like a really, really hard thing to do without actually getting them into the team of being the builders. So while when we look at a broader spectrum of use cases, uh, there are multiple issues that come, right? That a lot of times we have faced this issue that, the intermediary is also an interesting challenge. So because we work with a lot of nonprofits, there is a bias that the intermediary carries as well in terms of understanding their beneficiary or their customer. And then that bias itself comes into the technology solutions we build. And by the time the solution hits the ground, that bias kind of, keeps on adding up. And then the solution that the beneficiary is using is sometimes so wide that, it doesn't work, right? So I think, and we have had those challenges. I mean, we have had to fight with some of our customers to give us access to the real customer. And we know that even when you send somebody from Bangalore or Pune to sit down in a village for a week, you're still not going to get it, right? It's still going to leave such a massive gap. You'll still probably figure out the best case scenarios, not really know the worst case scenarios. So I think, I would say, I mean, if you can literally generalize it as an empathy gap, and how do you solve for the empathy gap? How do you bring in the lived experiences into the solutions that you're building? I think that is the biggest challenge, because and the cost of doing this becomes so high that you don't do it. I mean, why are we talking about inclusivity? Why aren't we talking universal design, right? uh, why is this even a topic today? Is because there is a cost of doing that. And what I see AI bring in is that maybe that cost is crashed like crazy, that you're not changing your tools, but you're giving these AI enabled goggles or tools or functional aids that doesn't need you to do anything special. I think that could be a massive opportunity to reimagine. One is, how do you build it in a way that it becomes inclusive, or how do you just make AI a tool that makes everybody just the same? Like Divyanshu was saying, is blindness even a thing anymore? Right? So I think AI enables a lot of those things, but I think that's a journey to get to. But coming back to your question, right? So I think the biggest thing would be the empathy gap, the access to the actual beneficiary, and a continuous access, I would say, because it's not about just going and doing a field visit and doing your persona analysis once, right? You have to keep doing it. If you were building for PWDs, we have to have them in the team. You can't do that with, once in a while QA reviews with, somebody who can actually give you a big picture. If you're not designing for that from day one, that's not happening. So I think those are like the biggest challenges. And I'm still not talking about, I mean, on a broad level, the geographical challenges or the internet flakiness or SMS is not getting delivered. That's still, I would say that's at least common for everyone. Forget whether you have a disability or not. That's like a physical digital infrastructure issue that I think together we will solve, get to. But when we talk about this specific audience, you're talking about a much bigger deficit. And I think uh, it's very important. I think both Karthik's talked about it, Divyansh talked about it, is it's very important that everybody else who we consider as people without disabilities, which itself is a perception, I believe. Because I was just when I was talking to someone and realizing three of us have specs in this room, that itself used to be a disability. It's not. We don't consider it today. It was so eye-opening. And it's crazy, right? I mean, unless we normalize this, I think our lenses have to shift. We have to move from thinking charity to rights agency and moving to co-creation from that lens. I think that would be foundational. And that probably, and that maybe also means that you have to actually be able to crash the costs. And for whoever is building, whoever is funding, whoever is sponsoring, make sure that the cost is justifiable because this is a huge audience also, right? We're talking about purple economy. If we can position things in a way that it absolutely makes business sense to build, if we can activate market to build, then I think we are looking at the solution there because I think it's in our minds more than the customers. I think there is such a big audience out there who can pay for these services. It's not like they're asking for it for free. Nobody's asking for charity here. So
Yeah.
I think that's where some of those
That part. I think I'm going to pick two or three interesting points that you make and connect it to USR as I bring him in. One is you need to have diversity in your team. And that's sometimes I guess there are challenges and whatever, but nonetheless, that one point. You brought in the question of universal design, which is been something that we've struggled with for a very long period of time. And I want to challenge one part though. Is it time for us to stop using the word beneficiary? Do we start engaging with people differently if you see them as users or customers? Is there something in our mindset that sort of makes this the beneficiary language somehow makes it more I don't know, lessens the value in some way? I'm just putting that out there for consideration in terms of vocabulary as a huge part of how I'm also thinking about this from the perspective of what Karthik was saying in the beginning, right? When you ask an AI chatbot, it says certain things about, it says things in a certain way. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, that's okay. That's just what it is. But maybe then language and vocabulary is a huge part of the shifts that we all perhaps have to embrace a little bit. And do we look at people differently when you see them as users and customers? And the way you engage with them then is more long-term. Rather than maybe, I wonder whether beneficiary makes things a little bit transactional sometimes. Having said that, I really want to bring USR in, and particularly in the context of the comment that Parth made about how do you bring people into your teams? How do you make your teams diverse? Is this something you have struggled with, or have you engaged with this in some way? And what are the sort of systematic mindset shifts at the leadership level that you think enable to create more inclusive workspaces? Particularly as builders of technology, then building inclusive technology. So, Yosar, if I can bring you in with that question.
Deepika, thanks for, and your point is right. In fact, I will just roll back a little bit on what Pooja also alluded to. See, it requires a change as we all understand, right? But then obviously it has to start in schools. But then, as she rightly said, it takes a decade for it to show up. It actually comes into the society. But then the intermediate approach, I believe, is that it also has, I consider coming from schools is more of bottoms-up approach, but I think we also need to look at how do you do top-down in the sense that it is given that the avenues for learning, the gap that earlier persisted for people with disabilities to come up to speed is vanishing. But then where the rubber meets the ground is how do you make use of such newly acquired skills into the business still requires some boardroom discussions and strategies, where I think probably again, what you said, right? No, the complaint into the being compliant to the laws is different from looking at, hey, there is a talent pool, there is a skill set, there are use cases. How do you leverage? Which is moving the conversation from, as you said, beneficiary accommodations to business, if I were to talk about it, right? Because there is something to be accomplished. I think that change, obviously, I believe, will come from top down with the leadership taking initiative to think differently. Again, there is a cost. As Partha rightly said, there is time, like Pooja alluded to, and there is a cost to anything that we do in universal design. But then if you tie to a business, then it becomes more appealing and accelerate the process, right? In fact, like Parth rightly said, right? If there are smart glasses today, it hugely, there is a technology platform available. And if you can create differentiation, there is business, there is value that you create for the company, as well as serving, taking advantage of what is, you don't understand what is required to be developed unless the team is part of the team that you are trying to develop or create the solution for your customers, right? So I think, so in a nut, if you look at, to summarize, coming from the business that we run, right? Any corporate, obviously, there are two aspects to it, right? One is HR-driven initiative, and you get as much commitment as it is today. But then, but it is driven by business leaders. The scale at which it operates is different because the first thing you get is there is a spark. You say, hey, you are responsible for business. I'll review on your performance. Makes a difference.
Yeah.
Right? There is a KRI, there is a metric, there are performance reviews, and it gets reviewed as any other business. You can't imagine every quarter we get drilled on how are we performing on each line of business that we are operating, right? And then I think the technology has enabled enough opportunities to be able to create business, in turn enabling all the capabilities that we are trying to build behind the scenes, right? That's I believe is what is required. So 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 build a business strategy around that helps PWD inclusion is the mantra that I believe that will work. But then how does it happen? Obviously, as I said, have dedicated leaders, because today 5G represent, I have a 5G business leader. I only review him, how much business you are making, what new use cases, where there are pockets. See, for me, solving a problem is business, right? So, and there are enough problems to solve in the space that we are talking about, right? In fact, I think part we have a team, large team, into thousands, who actually try to validate the accessibility functions of any website or mobile application. And then if Europe government says that all the websites are to be accessibility compliant, there is enough business to be made. But then there is a gap. When we started doing this, there is a gap. Then we have to work with somebody like TMF to know that, hey, there is a skill gap that I have. And then how do we curate the content? Right? Again, this is to come from boardroom strategy leadership saying that we are committed and we work with the ecosystem to make it happen. Right? The second thing is, again, I think it was alluded to saying that are we actually looking for, if we were to train the models and then all that, still our job descriptions are completely vast. I never seen any job description written to be inclusive, right? So you train, whatever models that are available today, I don't think they will help in any way because they just don't know, because there are not enough job descriptions which are written neutral or written with the PWD inclusive, right? So I think there is a little bit of it's an investment, but then investment tied to your business should again come from the boardroom. I think all said and done, the last one I want to tell you is that we already talked about PWD infrastructure investments, right? And I think we have come to a stage where it is no more an investment because anything that everything that we do is digital, right? With Copilot is an investment made for the universal requirement. Even I need Copilot today to improve my productivity, right? It is like what is it? Path said that if I'm wearing glasses, it is no more. We are differentiated because it's accepted, that it is with the same with everyone. If everybody uses Copilot, so be it, right? So that's basically is again the gap that probably the leadership can influence. And the last one I want to tell you is that walk the talk. I think most of the leaderships can do the walk the talk, saying come and then promote the focus they are bringing in, not as a HR initiative, which is today we are in the market. A lot of people are in the public domain, but more as an initiative or a CSR, but not as a workable solution that they are creating, not necessarily as the CSR initiative, but more towards creating business and opportunities for the corporate as well as the rest of the team. I think if you look at all of them, which is which only happens from boardrooms, I guess, Deepika. I think that's
Yeah,
what I
of
believe.
course, of course. And you know what I like about what you said is, Jake, in many ways, what you're really saying, USR, is that, you know what, to have an inclusive team should be business as usual. It should be mandated very much like every other things that are mandated
100%.
that we actually stick and do. And you treat it as an HR and CSR initiative, it tends to take a certain flavor, which is akin to the beneficiary mindset. So therefore, perhaps we just have to this is the way to get ahead of the game, as it were.
That's
And
right.
and thank you for that. I know we have about 10 minutes before we get into Q&As, but there are questions which are coming in the chat. But I'm just going to get to those questions after this next round of very short questions that I'm going to give each one of you. I'll start with Karthik. Karthik, you talked about, in our previous conversation when we spoke a few days ago, you talked about voices of persons with disability, if you recall, Karthik.
Yes.
You talked about the need for that to be heard. Okay. I want you to consider answering that question, saying, what would you ask, right? How can we make that happen? And how can we make that happen where if you respond to the way that Partha and USR are talking about builders of technology, saying, listen, we want to be more inclusive, we will bring people into our teams, we want to be doing that, but what should the demand be from the voice, right? And what should the voice be saying to these people by saying, well, if you are to build responsibly for me and for us, do it this way.
Yeah. And I think this goes back to also empowering those voices in the first place, right? And this is also where I think that, to me, it's not so much about what those voices should say specifically about how AI should be developed or how they should be using AI or how we should think about, inclusion and biases and all of that. I think it's important for us to really help them, bring them along on the journey, right? Because the reality is today a lot of people don't even have digital connectivity. A lot of people in the community are not assistive technology literate. And so again, it's no use to develop all of these models and talk about inclusion and all of that when someone doesn't even know how to use a keyboard or how to use a screen reader and other things that are fundamental to helping them do this. And so I think the question really is, how do you bring them along on the journey? How do you then help them understand, hey, here's all of the different things that are available. Now, given those realities, what are your ambitions? What do you want us to do? What do you aspire for from this technology? And what are you worried about? What are you scared about? And then how do you also factor in intersectionality in the kinds of people that you're speaking to? One of the biggest issues that I've seen happen is, I think this idea of diverse teams and participation, this is not new. We've had this for decades, right? I mean, every year there are youth groups that get invited to global forums like the UN and World Economic Forum and everything else, right? This has been happening for a while. The question is, I get to speak today because I, in some ways, am privileged. What about that someone living in Uttarkashi, for example? And I'll be listening to that person. And how do we ensure that their voices get heard and we're really thinking about their lived experience in how we shape this technology? I think that's really the key, right? So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there are specific things again, right? That or specific questions that we can go with. That's just not possible because I've been working in the disability sector for so many years now. I'll admit, I really don't understand the real needs and challenges of majority of the community, even today. And so who am I to represent them?
Yep.
So yeah.
Fantastic answer. And therefore, I do want to have a follow-on one. So, this question of how do we get remote voices heard is a question of discovery on two ends, right? It's discovery of the voice and their needs, and even whatever they might want to say at one side, but also the bigger point that you bring out, which is this question of how do you discover what's out there? That there is a screen reader. How do I learn to become a screen reader user? That I have to do these other things. So there are foundational things which are required, which are a little bit almost like literacy at this stage to just start engaging with technology. It's so foundational. At the same time, there are all of these diverse solutions that are popping up all over the place. It is overwhelming. It is
Absolutely.
extremely overwhelming for everybody. Anybody in this panel have any ideas on how we might solve for discovery?
I think I should probably bring in the Ability Network team here. That's exactly what the idea is, and I think
Yeah, I was
we'll,
itching to jump in, but carry on.
I was queuing it up, Neha. That was the
no, that's exactly where the incredible
Thanks,
work
Deepika.
comes in. Yeah. No, I think certainly, solutions like that, and then again, thinking about how do you get those solutions, and Neha and I have had very interesting discussions in the past about, we're starting with web. How do we ensure that people who don't, thinking about people at all kinds of walks of life and life stages, right? People who don't have access to the web, people who only have access to phones, feature phones, all of that. How do you make this multi-platform? How do you make this, available in whatever makes sense to the user? So yeah, no, I think super excited about, of course, all of the amazing work that's happening and all of the stuff that is yet to happen and yet to come, right? To truly make sense. Yeah.
No, I think the idea of enabling a space, a trusted space, a trusted voice where you can actually find the things that you might need to, and that voice may be able to do whatever it can do, but at least it opens some doors for you. So something like a TAN network certainly could be a type of a solution for discovery. Pooja, what worries you in this AI world? I know the possibilities and everything are there, and all of that is great. I think you made some incredibly powerful points in the reimagination to turn things on the head in terms of even the schooling and learning experience itself, right? Everything we've struggled with, from assessments of diverse assessments to differential lesson plans to all of these kinds of things, are now much easier solved with a good aid like empowered by AI. But what worries you? And if you can also talk about your worries in the context of barriers that you're seeing that are really, really being ignored. Both barriers and worries, please.
I think what worries me in the context of what I spoke about earlier was that we're not thinking about what this means fundamentally to what we do with education. So if you actually think about how one looks at special education, as a parallel stream, it's very individual focused. Who is the individual? What is it that they need? How can we help them achieve the best of their potential? How can we support them in that? How do we create a plan, as teachers, different stakeholders kind of coming together to say, how do we help this human thrive as much as possible? I think the fact that we're not actually having that conversation in the context of, all the technological advancements that have been made on how important it is, with education as a foundation for, the new world that's coming in. The AI is as good as the data that you feed it. So I think what Divyanshu and Karthik talked about, how if we don't have enough out there, you're actually, even the AI is not, talking about the needs of the individual, of individuals with disability. So the fact that, we're not actually thinking about that in the more human context is what worries me. And I think, you're asking about barriers and challenges, and I alluded to some of it in the previous segment as well about, just awareness. I think India as a country, we've talked about digital access and how we need to work towards it, but I am very often surprised by, how many people have a smartphone in their hand and the potential of a smartphone, right? You drive through Delhi in the middle of the night and you'll find a lot of people sleeping under flyovers, the dike niche with a smartphone light sort of shining on their face. What is it that you do with that access? And how can we approach that intentionally? How can we create bridges with that access that's available? Because it is also about cultivating the behaviors. And and helping people along to access a better potential for life. So the fact that we're not thinking about that, and some of the points that I talked about, how do you build awareness? How do we expand our own understanding of the potential of the tools that are available freely to us? There's some tools that are actually pretty good, that are not that expensive, that never really come up within the first 2 pages of a Google search. How do you actually, one, get a teacher to be thinking, or get an individual to be searching for stuff? Second, get them to page 3 of a Google search. So also at the supplier end, at the supply side, make sure that they're more discoverable. Uh, and then just use it, build that comfort, because what we have is 3 different generations that are currently out there engaging actively with, different degrees of comfort with using technology. So building that comfort and building that engagement, I think, is important.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one question. Is there an AI tool that you like and use quite regularly? Which one is it?
So I don't use it quite regularly, but an AI tool that a lot of folks in our community like is something called Ludia. So I talked about universal design for learning in classrooms, and that is something that people wish they had, whether they're from a government school context or a mid-range private school context. A lot of people wish they'd known about it earlier to create more inclusive classrooms. But
Fantastic.
yeah, and screen readers, I think, with folks with learning disabilities, I think we often think about screen readers in the, instance of visual impairment or supporting visual impairment. Actually, it's very, very helpful with folks with learning disabilities as well.
Thank you, Pooja. Thanks so much. US sir, I'm actually going to bring you in a little bit, because I asked Pooja questions on tools, and maybe I can ask you the same as well. As somebody who's running sort of the business end of things and the engineering side, right? Do you leverage AI on your day-to-day basis? What kind of tools are you using to kind of find people, upskill your teams? And what other, I mean, AI tools, of course, but in addition to that, I'm also going to ask this question, is what tools do you use to discover use cases that matter, which can enable inclusive building? So if you can answer both of these, please.
So I think, see, for us, if you look at the hiring process itself, I think that is the earliest use case, probably most successful, because today in the context of where we are operating today in India, if I were to hire one person, on an average, 100 people that you have to screen, right? So that's the success ratio is only 1%. I think so. Last year we started implementing AI-led profile screening, for lack of a better word, right? So the screener, which scrapes all the public based on the suspicion that we have and the profiles that are available. Employees upload their friends, and then consultants, they'll put their own people that they refer, and then we also go to public sites. So obviously we scrape through, and then again, the evaluation is very specific to the areas that we work on. It's not a public model that really works for us. Hence, we worked with a partner. We took their solution, retrained it to meet our requirements. Now, right? But then that works. That obviously there are a lot of productivity improvement. However, we can only train with the data that we have, and the data I have is what the JDs that I recruited in the past, right? Obviously, there is a gap that typically is a bridge. That what I was talking to in the past, right?
Yeah, you were saying that earlier. Yes.
Yeah. Two is there is not I think every other than the coffee break and tea break, otherwise rest of the time we are on calls. And now if you look at any of these teams, for example, that we popularly use, is now has got live transcriptions available. It gives the summary of the conversations, right? Which is, again, as I said previously, it was a luxury in the past, but today I become handicapped if I don't have that facility. I just take my eyes off, knowing fully well that I can get the summary out of at the end of the call. Okay, and then it gives the action items. You say on your name, we use Microsoft Cobol. It tells you the other 3 action items against you. That's okay, right? So it is in a way, it doesn't distinguish, right? It's applicable for all. So that is, again, that's what it is. 3, again, if I don't take reference today when I talk to the customers that I auto generate code, I auto generate test cases, I don't need to be in the business, right? So again, is it specific? It is for people with like me who has got 30 years of coding experience. I'm more valued to say that I auto generate code not using my inherent capabilities, right? Again, that's how I am measured today, right? Right, and so that's what it is. And most of these tools today, if you look at Teams or any of the automated code generators, comes integrated accessibility features because they are. It is not specific to me. Anybody will use that. But there is a business case for them anyway, right? So that's, I think, is the other one that we talk about. The last one is that there's some constraints, like Pooja was saying, right? If there is some changes are required because some guardrails are put before AI was there, and it becomes more constrained with the AI. I'll tell you some of the examples today, right? During the COVID times, practically, when I interview people through voice, I interview one person, but the person who joins is somebody else, right? So then we said, no, everybody has to come on camera. Okay, but then I am hurting the inclusiveness because my corporate mandate today is that you have to upload the screenshots and the video capture, which probably is not what works well for all. It will not, we are excluding some points again, but there is a reason, but then there is an opportunity we are missing. All right.
Yes, what you're really calling for is also a little bit of process adjustments that one needs to make in order
Too
to
much
be
is
able to
required.
make it.
That is true. See, I tell you, I have a kid who we picked up a fight, like going what who just said. There's a Prezi rating is what you might have done in your childhood. Even my son today,
Yeah.
this guy puts in ChatGPT and says, "I'm ready," and then my says, "How does it help?" But is it required? Required, and then how do I control it? Right? If I stop giving access to him, then I'm going back to my days of learning,
Yeah.
right? But if I give it, he just exploits the technology.
And that's perhaps its own version of accessibility in that sense. And that's question that we have to grapple with, whether it's school or in university or at workplaces, is this business of how much of it are you allowing, how are you allowing, and who is it empowering and who is it helping? I think with that question, I want to pivot a little to Parth. And apart, I'm going to club this with one of the audience questions as well, so that I'm in the interest of time. Parth, what does it mean for you to build responsibly, right? Especially AI solutions. What does it mean? What do we need to think about? What should we allow? How brave should we be? What are the guardrails? Some of that, if you can talk of. And because this is connected to the question that one of the audience members are asking, how do you balance scale, innovation, and sensitivity when building public infrastructure? So I am asking in the context of AI, they are asking in the context of DPI, but it's similar in terms of guardrails. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think building responsibly, right? And of course, it applies to AI a lot right now because the bias. So if you look at it, what is happening right now is that human beings are biased by design. I mean, we are biased in so many small things, and AI is kind of amplifying our bias in so many ways, right? And let's say some percentage of us humans, hopefully the builders, are at least recognizing that you're biased. I think that's the start. It's very important to recognize the small biases that we carry uh, in every conversation that we have and are listening in how we express ourselves. And I think that's where it starts. So I think one thing that we have been trying to do a lot internally is open up these biases, make sure that everybody in the room is at least aware and recognizes and accepting those biases, because I think that's where it starts. A lot of times it's you have to fight with people to get them to realize that what they're saying is actually biased, and that is hard, right? I mean, we are social beings. We have been evolving over generations. Some of our biases are generational, some of them are because India as a country is biased about some things. There is bias is very, very deep. It goes super deep. And that AI is biased is not, it's just a natural reflection of that. So you're not going to suddenly change that. I think it's about us being more responsible in our own thinking as we build, continuously thinking about that and ensuring that we don't let at least the recognized biases carry into what we're building. what we are creating. I think, and that's a continuous process, not going to stop.
How would you do that? No, it's very easy on a panel for us to talk about it and say responsible general bias. Is there a way, is there any ideas you may have run up against where it says, okay, fine, I'm actually saying look out for this, and this. Right? How do you address that? You can give us one example. I know we're running out of time.
I'll give
to
you an
actually
example
look at
which
it.
is not related to this, but this is very fresh in my mind. And I think we talked about it in a completely different context. Deepika. Is language as a bias, right? So I come from Pune. Now we have this way of speaking Marathi, which is supposed to be, we think it's the right Marathi. 50 kilometers outside the city, people talk about it in a different way. Now, if this guy comes in and sits in an interview, and some Puneri Marathi speaking guy sits in an interview, if I'm not cognizant of the fact that my mind is going to be biased towards this other person, if they're balanced in all the other ways, that bias is going to carry. It's such a small thing. And who made language important, right? And we have all this three language problems right now. Language has always been a political tool, right? And we have been biased with, I mean, you can go really deep into it, maybe another podcast or another session about
Yeah. So another conversation on that one.
Yeah,
But
but I'm
the
saying
point
that
is to
what
say, are there domains of bias that you should actually call out in an organization? Because you need people to think about it and say, you make bias the mainstream, like talk about the question of bias and differentiation as a mainstream conversation in your organization is what you're really trying to say. Okay.
Yeah. So what we try and do is make sure that people are talking about it. And when you sit down in a workshop, right, with your customer, with your, hopefully the customer and the actual customer, let's not talk about who is the
Yes.
intermediary, because for most of us builders, our customers are intermediaries, whether they are a non-profit or a for-profit or a government, it's the citizen that you're building for at the end of the day, right? So when you do that and how you run that conversation, and even that is so important, right? I think, Karthik, we talked about listening to the voice of the customer. So, A, are we even talking to our customers? Do they even have a room at the, a chair at the table when we actually make these decisions of how we'll build for them? That's what I mean. Just keeping expanding that horizon and making sure that the conversation is done in a way that they feel that they have agency and voice and choice in that conversation. That's something that we try and do. It's a hard road, but doing that actually make sure that the rest of the room is more cognizant to that fact. You'll never get to every type of customer, but when you do more of that, your product
So
managers, your designers, they start becoming a little more open and start
these same
really,
principles apply even when you build for DPI, right?
yeah. So now that's
Ultimately,
interesting because
there is no substitute for talking to the end user of a solution.
yep, absolutely. And flipping to the DPI, right? I mean, that's what I was really thinking about since I've been talking to Neha, and the TAN has kind of come up. One of the things I've been grappling with is that what does a DPI for accessibility look like? What is that one simple fundamental thing we could do that could literally change it, right? And I think we have talked about it, and you also talked about it. How do you reduce the cost of serving this customer? Because only when you do that, that will happen. Simple as banking, right? If Aadhaar hadn't happened, we would still be unbanked. And weren't they as unprivileged? Weren't they the people with disabilities and did not have access to banking from that perspective? So that flipped it, right? So I think if we can go deeper on that, and I think AI can enable that, if what could be that tech or AI layer that for PWDs that opens them up to the world and normalizes the world for them and normalizes them for us. I mean,
Got
and
it.
that's where, and I don't have a solution to that, but I think just thinking of it as a DPI lens, I think that's very important. That not, I mean, we can come up with all these tools and you can find 1,000 use cases for that. But when you start thinking DPI, you can't think solutions.
You can't think
You
solutions.
think what will
Absolutely.
enable solutions. And that is so interesting that what is that one small thing we could do? That
Absolutely.
is, and I don't have an
We
answer
find
yet. I'll
that
definitely come back when I
that's a longer conversation, and that's going to take a lot out of us to kind of find that one sort of thing that can make the change and shift it. But I'm very cognizant of time, and there is one question which I have to address to you as just come from the audience. But before that, Karthik, I have a question for you. Which are your favorite AI tools? Yours.
Yeah, okay. So I think for me, a lot of the AI tools are there are tools that are being developed out in the community as well. And a lot of these tools are actually specific tools that are grounded in lived experiences of people. And I think those kinds of tools are probably my favorite around all kinds of things, right? Right from career discovery, right from just using assistive tech, et cetera, et cetera. And I think those really do help ensure that the information that I'm actually getting is meaningful. So yes, I would be proud.
Name them, Karthik. Help the
There are a lot of companies putting out as well. So Microsoft, for example, for its all stuff, has basically put out a chatbot called Ask Accessibility. The NFB, which is National Federation of the Blind, they have another tool as well. So there are a bunch of tools. Depending on what you're trying to do, the disability community has been very active trying to get a lot of those grounded tools available at that right now.
Thanks a lot for that.
Yeah.
USR, there's a question for you, which is actually a marketing question. So I'm going to I'm going to read that out to you. It's a very interesting one, though. I don't know. It says the Meta glasses are being marketed for something that is for general public. It's not being marketed as an assistive tech, right? So when you're building assistive tech, is that to be marketed differently? Right? Do you think positioning this as a general product increases more adoption or limits its appeal to niche users like persons with disability? It's a very interesting question, right? Because when you look at smartphones has made things accessible for many people. And nobody actually ever said that these are for persons with disability or for inclusion purposes. It's an interesting question on So how do you see it, sir?
So I think in fact we are actively involved. Tech Mahindra is part of engineering some of those advanced technologies. But then I completely agree. The marketing, in fact, to be honest with you, the devices that we're talking about today never had a use case in mind. They were more taken as they have a different view of looking at. If you go back in time, iPhone has replaced 3 different devices, right? Phone, then camera, and all that, right? So the idea of this is to how do you enable communications, not having to have a phone, right? Separate accessory. You make it the experience as part of a wearable so that you don't have to carry. That's a larger vision. And then when device is out, now we are thinking about now the technology is there. What other use cases that we can talk about? But to be honest with you, it was never a thought. But in fact, we were working with Saajhi today to say that now the avenue is available. Even the company that invented those products is now looking at how do I monetize it faster. Right? It is so. Right? That's how it started. But I completely agree with you that obviously in business people would start addressing the largest TAM that they will have. To be honest with you, it's a black and white, and then the adjacencies are afterthought. Right? If the main market is successful, and then when the revenues go flat, then they would say, how do I create a spike by going to adjacencies? I think that's the context here. But I think, in fact, now as we speak, the companies in this space seriously believe that this would be one of the largest segments that they can create a differentiation. But then that's a byproduct, because to be honest with you, nobody knew that the product will actually see the light. The technologies that went into it, they got 300 challenges to solve, right? So, but now that the technology is there, now they are after us to say that now tell me, where do I like that the glasses recently got launched in India, and they're looking at what is India's specific use case or use cases that will create that spurt in the demand, right? So that's basically what happens. That's correct. True. And then talking to I just want to give you a practical example, Deepa, right? Talking to the voice of customer obviously makes a difference in business. And then obviously, right, unless you talk to them, you never know what is to be built. 200%. I'll give you a small example, practical example, right? We have this expectant mothers, maternity policies running for the last 35 years in Techam. 2 years back, they said, why don't we create a cohort group, bring the expectant mothers in touch with a mentor who has underwent this process. And you know what? Now they actually dictate the policies on what is beneficial for them. More importantly, can you believe that there are metrics that we track on how many mothers are joining at the end of the allowed or permitted period? If somebody is not coming, it means that they have an operational challenge. that is holding them back is better, and then solve them. So we have a metric. How many are coming back, right? Two is that when they come back to work, how much time they are taking, how much we are taking to put them on a project work. All of a sudden, we are on toes. Hey, you know what? Now I got measured, and I had to find a way.
I think I find it
important
interesting. This example is interesting, particularly because it talks to about what it means when something becomes mainstream and
because
business.
you don't know. We don't know. It was just a policy is made. They just made, right? But
No,
now
understood. I hear you. I hear you completely.
Right.
And I think in some ways this connects to an earlier point which you made about how everything needs to be more mainstreamed in its own way, and very much to the point that Pooja was saying, that inclusion is something that has to become automatic and part of day-to-day business in running a classroom. And these things, when you create a measure for something and then it then becomes that you start thinking, oh, I'm watching it, I'm creating data for it. And then I'm like, am I doing better? Am I getting better at it? Pooja, I know you have your hand up. I will let you have the last word. Go for it.
I just wanted to add to USR's example from within my family. So one of my brothers has an intellectual disability, and just talking about mainstreaming, accessibility tools on our phone that we don't even think of as accessibility tools. So a few years ago, and this is like an example that I see every day at home and I'm inspired by, I found my brother using voice search to search for information. And it is something, he would have probably not gotten the spellings right if he were to write it out. He would have not done it, but just because he had a smartphone in his hand, he was using voice search, and as he's gotten comfortable with it, he's got so much smarter about the world around him because he's able to pursue his interests and he's able to explore information without any limitations of what we think would be of interest to him or what his, capabilities are. So he's super smart about the India-China geopolitics, something that you would not expect, you would not organically think to expose somebody with an intellectual disability to. And that is our limited belief. And I see this on a daily basis, but this, is a mainstream tool that, he's using. And your point earlier about not thinking of someone as a beneficiary, but just as a user, and how we can sort of find what those common user needs are and build to those. I think we need to start considering disability perspectives within that as well.
Thank you so much for that. And that is a perfect note to end this conversation. And a very optimistic place to be at, particularly on the role of technology, the role of AI, and what it could do, and what it can enable us to do faster. Look, I don't think any of us are under the impression that these are problems that we will be able to solve overnight, or that it is a bus that we're going to miss, and once it's missed, it will never be undone. But I think the real opportunity is to do whatever we've wanted to do for a long time, but to us as builders, creators, thinkers, policymakers, and actually executors of anything, to use AI tools to get there faster. For us, it is going to be about helping ourselves get there faster. TAN, of course, is going to be a great opportunity to see how it evolves, because it could solve one of the bigger challenges that has come out in this conversation from all of us, that of discoverability, that of enabling and unlocking access. And if it just does that and does nothing else, it would actually be hugely, I think, beneficial for this ecosystem. And with that, thank you all very much for this conversation. I'd like to hand this back to Taran to close it out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Deepika, for moderating such a meaningful discussion. I thank all my panelists and the participants for such an engaging and informative session. I'm sure it has truly sparked many thoughts and ideas among all of us. So now, as we draw to a close, I would now like to invite Ms. Porvi Srivastav, Assistant Manager Disability at Tech Mahindra Foundation, to deliver the closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Taran. As we come close to the 14th edition of Saajhi Samajh, my heart is full of inspiration and gratitude. Today's conversation reaffirms a belief that when compassion meets innovation, inclusion is not just possibility, it becomes a reality. We heard powerful stories, thought-provoking insights, and witnessed the unveiling of efforts that surely reflects a future that is shaped by dignity, equity, and access for all. especially persons with disabilities. The unveiling of the Ability Network website is a testament to our shared commitment to this inclusive journey. Saajhi Samajh 14 was an invitation to reimagine the future, not just with more technology, but more compassion and inclusive intelligence. On behalf of Tech Mahindra Foundation, I extend my warm welcome and thank you to our chief guest, our esteemed speakers, our panelists, and every participant who joined us today. Your presence and energy made this gathering meaningful. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to our incredible organizing team, whose efforts may have remained behind the scenes, but whose impact was the heart of making this experience truly seamless. Let's carry the spirit of inclusive intelligence forward in our workplaces, our classrooms, our homes, and our hearts. Until we meet again, let's continue to build more compassionate and tech-enabled inclusive world that works for all of us. Before we leave, let's stay back for a couple of seconds so that we have a group picture.